Hello everyone, welcome to another session of AP Human Geography with Mr. Elrod. Today we're going to continue on to Unit 7 discussing cities and urban land use. And so in our last couple of videos, what we were looking at is kind of this trend of cities over time, geographic locations, ties to economic production, those types of things. And today what we're going to be looking at is a concept or idea that's been developed what's called urban systems. So really when we talk about urban systems, what we're looking at is the increasing connectedness of cities. And so we've been talking about this idea of globalization throughout the entire year. And so what's happened is over time with globalization, the increasing connectedness of places, is that these cities are really what are connecting each other and connect people around the world to each other. And it's really through these different cities. And so globalization, I guess you could say, is almost propagated through the cities themselves because the cities almost act as the node or the center of the connection. And so not only do you have the people interacting with each other, but the cities themselves interact with each other, and they're going to have a great amount of influence on what they're doing. And so we look at the increasing connectedness of the cities, whether we're talking about the increasing economic connectedness of the cities, connectedness through transportation and transportation methods, the way that the populations themselves are connected, the way that they diffuse and connect through culture, or the way that they connect and share information. And so again, as globalization continued, you have these urban systems created through this connectedness, and the systems basically show just how are these connected and really which cities are the most important when it comes to these various connections. So one of the things that I did is I went and found this particular map that shows these global flight patterns, and of course, you look at this and you can say, okay, that's great, but what you have to think about is the places in our world that are going to have airports. Okay, so those are going to be more important cities if they have an airport. But then you also look at where are the flight patterns going? What places in the world are connected to each other? How connected are they? How many flights are making their way from one part of the world to the other? And so what kind of an influence is that going to have on that particular location and the connectedness of those two locations? And so it's interesting to look at, where do flights originate from? Where do they go to? How often do they go from one place to the other? And you can kind of get an idea of and get a feel for the connectedness of those particular places, and then you can kind of do some deeper study and investigation as to why are not more flights going there, or what is going to be the overall impact if two places either are highly connected or they're not connected at all. And so I think this idea of urban hierarchy, urban systems, is going to can be reflected through these various global flight patterns. Now, when we look at the urban system, we can basically look at the urban system as three sets of scales. And so, like I talked about, the cities themselves are almost like the nodes of globalization. So, as we were talking about in Unit 1, if you remember all the way back at the beginning of the year, we talked about different types of diffusion. Okay, and we talked about how, especially with cultural diffusion, you have these important cities where culture originates and then it kind of filters its way down. If you think about hierarchical diffusion, filters its way down to cities that are of less importance. And so this urban systems situation is the exact same way. You have the cities that are of utmost importance, kind of on the highest levels, and then you can work your way down. Cities that are still important, but not as important as cities that are above it, but certainly still important for diffusing information to the immediate area. So I feel like the urban systems again exist on three scales. You can look at the global, the regional, and possibly the local. So of course you have important global cities, places like New York, London, Tokyo, places where the hubs for economics, the hubs for culture, and in some places the hubs for international politics. Then of course you have regional cities that are of regional importance. You look at places like New York. New York kind of exists not only as a globally important city, but certainly a regionally important city among the entire Northeast. So places like New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and, an emerging city that's becoming more important is the city of Dallas. And you look at these across the United States as cities of importance, and as information filters down from the global level, it filters down to the regional level to these various regional cities, and then diffuses out to the cities that are not necessarily as important. And all of these cities are connected to each other, and then there are connected cities that are beneath them. And then, of course, at the local level. So what happens is information filters down from global to regional, and then more to the local. And in this system, you have the city of Atlanta, one of the more important cities in the South, kind of the hub for the South. Of course, you have the world's largest airport in Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, and it acts kind of as the hub for some of these various, these local cities. So Atlanta, Macon, which is south of Atlanta, Birmingham, Alabama, Greenville, South Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina. You can maybe even put in something like Chattanooga, Tennessee. And so it's going to kind of bring those together, and Atlanta is going to kind of act as the hub. Now, certainly Atlanta does not exist on the global level, but information is going to filter down from global to regional to local into Atlanta and then out to those other cities. And so what you'll notice is not only are these three systems connected to each other, but they're also independent of each other, to where they kind of almost exist as their own network of cities that are going to be interacting with each other. Now, when we look at this urban systems, this is just going to be the introductory video, this idea of urban systems. And when we talk about this idea of urban systems, it's illustrated and it's discussed in a couple of different ways. And so here's the way that we're going to be looking at this kind of as we go through the video, through the series of lectures, and kind of in the order that we're going to discuss them. First, we're going to talk about what's called the central place theory, also called Christoller's central place theory. Then we're going to look at this idea of what's called the urban hierarchies, very similar to what we were just discussing just a second ago with this idea of how these three scales that we can look at. Talk about what's called the rank size rule, okay? And then we're going to look at what's called Borchert's model of urban systems, okay? And so those are just the four concepts or four illustrations really of this idea of urban systems that have been developed over time that we're going to be discussing in upcoming videos. So that was just kind of an introduction to the idea of urban systems. I hope that makes sense. Of course, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comment box below, and I hope to see you next time.